Now, I wouldn't say Yoshi-P speaks for everybody when it comes to gaming because new hardware is always exciting and it's something that people look forward to. And when I was growing up back in the day, from the NES to the Super NES, from the Super NES to the N64, from PS1 to PS2 to PS3, it was exciting. But I think we can all kind of look at the insanity that is happening right now with the gaming industry and the prices and the systems and say, enough is enough at this point. PlayStation 5 Pro, before you even get a disc drive, if you get a disc drive, you slap on some tax on there, it is getting dangerously close to $1,000. You're looking at the Xbox ROG Ally. That seems to be $899 before you even get a dock with the system and tax. The Nintendo Switch 1, super old, but that went up to $400 when it comes to the OLED model here in the US at least. And the Xbox Series got a price jump as well to $600 for the Xbox Series X and nearly $400 for the Xbox Series S. And Yoshi-P, the creator of Final Fantasy 16, Square Enix producer, this guy's been around in the industry for decades, feels that there is no need for new hardware right now. And you know what? I think there are millions upon millions of gamers, myself included, that also echo those statements. And I've got a number of reasons why Yoshi-P is right on this case at least. Now let's go ahead and get into a snippet of what he had to say when it comes to new hardware. PS6, Xbox Series 2, Nintendo Switch 3, whatever the case is. Quote, "When I look at things from a gamer's perspective, I feel that there's no real need to make new hardware because I think right now people are happy with Xbox Series X, the PlayStation 5, or the Nintendo Switch 2. And honestly, from a gamer's perspective as well, hardware is just expensive to buy." And yeah, that's essentially what everybody has been complaining about. We've already seen price hikes on older hardware released 7-8 years ago with the Nintendo Switch 1, released 5 years ago with the PlayStation 5, Xbox. This is a problem, and I think that a lot of gamers out there are feeling just like this. We're happy with the hardware that's out right now. Yeah, there are some people that are acting crazy when it comes to something like, I don't know, Metal Gear Solid Delta and the PS5 and the PS5 Pro, how that can't run it at a solid 60 because of Unreal Engine or whatever. But the majority of games run decent and good enough, and gamers are happy with that. And I think that there are a number of problems here if Microsoft and Sony decide to push the envelope and do new hardware too soon and people just say, you know what, I'm out, or I'm just gonna stick with what I've got. Look at the price hikes, guys. And speaking where Yoshi-P's coming from Japan, there have been multiple, not just one or two, but multiple price hikes in Japan when it comes to various different aspects of the PlayStation 5. You look at the price hikes of the PS5 even before we got to the price hike here in the US of $50 across the board with the PS5. The Xbox got price hikes, even in Japan where it sells literally almost nothing. It got a price hike there. It's gotten price hikes here in the US. Look at the Nintendo Switch 1, which I don't think received a price hike in Japan, and there's other cheaper ways of getting that. Plus the Nintendo Switch 2 is just cheaper in Japan because they have a Japan only model, but there was still a Switch 1 price hike when it comes to Canada and the US because of what we're going to talk about in just a bit. So if you're looking at all of that, he talks about the expense. He talks about how it's just getting more and more expensive. And Yoshi-P has actually talked about how it's difficult to consistently have to restart with a new install base just to sell your game, which are going to talk about how that's a massive issue and why I think gamers are probably thinking, you know what, I'm good with what I've got right now at this point. So if you look at it, it is really hard to build that new install base, and that can directly impact sales. The PS5 is actually a bit behind the PlayStation 4 aligned up when it comes to sales. Now, that's probably going to change once Grand Theft Auto 6 comes out. I think the PS5 is going to sell considerably better and outpace the PlayStation 4, but it's not like the PS5 is selling gangbusters despite having almost essentially every single game released for it on the market. It's selling very well, but it's not selling up to the level of the Nintendo Switch 1, the DS, or the PlayStation 2 when it comes to where it's probably going to end up overall sales-wise. I don't think it's going to hit 150 million or anything like that. 80 million plus units is not bad at all battle for less than 5 years. We're going on the 5-year anniversary at this point, and that's the ship numbers. So those are all the numbers that Sony has shipped out to stores. Yeah, there's still some sitting in stores, but that's essentially what they've sold to the retailers. That's still really good. It's not bad at all. But think about it. If they release a new system in the next couple of years, for example, that install base all of a sudden just goes back down to zero. And then you got to start over again with exclusives again and with other stuff. Or maybe there aren't as many exclusives, right? And people are wondering why even do this at this point if it's just for a little bit better frame rate or resolution, or maybe if you're pushing 8K, or if you're pushing everything 4K 120, and a lot of people can't even take advantage of that because they're playing on certain monitors or their TVs don't support all of that. I'd also say that the ballooning development cost is also a problem as well when it comes to new systems. Things are already incredibly expensive to develop for right now. Imagine new systems coming in and the price just gets higher overall before they've really even mastered what we have right now. So that's also another massive strike against having new systems way too soon. I see where Yoshi-P is coming from. He's complained about the install bases and having different types of systems and having to sell to certain gamers before. And I think that he's absolutely right when it comes to the hardware and how expensive it is to buy. And the funniest thing with that is that before the Nintendo Switch 2 launched, you saw countless people and videos and all that saying how it's too expensive, how the price hikes could cost them big. People talk about how expensive it was and comparing the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series and stuff like that. And then now if you look at it, everything else got a price hike on top of that, and that's before the next generation comes out. So everything's getting pricier to produce this technology, to pay your employees, to keep your business going, to keep shareholders happy. It's a huge profitable but logistical nightmare mess overall when it comes down to the gaming industry. So something's definitely got to give, and a bubble could burst overall with this if Microsoft and Sony aren't too careful with their next generation when it comes out and the prices. But I'm with Yoshi-P, man. I think that we're good, and I think that based off of what I've played with that system, it is plenty strong enough. When I was playing my Xbox Series X, that was plenty strong enough. The games run great on there for the most part. There are a few titles that need probably better optimization. Most of the games play great. Nintendo Switch 2, it's a little bit different. Obviously, it's a hybrid system, so you're not going to get quite the frame rate and resolution that you can get on Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 Pro or PlayStation 5, but it's a hybrid system. You can take it anywhere that you want, and you can play games like Super Mario Odyssey, for example, in 1080p 60 FPS perfectly, or you can dock that up and play it at 4K. Same thing goes for Splatoon and a lot of Nintendo's major first-party titles. They look and play great on docked mode or in portable mode, so that's going to be good enough for many people out there. And Square Enix can build RPGs built around that when it comes to like the Adventures of Elliot or Octopath Traveler 0 or even more middle range games. And we're getting reports that Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate on the Switch 2 looks phenomenal, the best looking game that they've seen so far on these systems. So to me, I don't really think that there's any need or rush to get right into it, and I think a lot of players are feeling the same way. If you just bought a PS5 Pro, are you really going to want to just say, all right, I'm gonna rush out and buy a PS6 in the next year or two? I don't think so. So we'll see, especially because that price, when it comes down to it, is going to be crazy. Man, it's going to be wild if they don't get something figured out here. I'd also say this, devs haven't fully utilized PS5 Pro, Switch 2 yet, or even Xbox Series X. I think that there's still a lot that developers can do with tricky engineering tricks and different optimizations that we haven't quite seen yet because they were still kind of holding on to the PlayStation 4 generation because of what? The install base that those systems had with PS4 and Xbox One. A lot of systems between those two, looking at nearly 200 million between them. So of course they're going to hold on to that generation overall. And now with PS5, it finally feels like we're just kind of getting going with the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series when it comes to the consistent releases of games. And I just don't think that it'd be a good idea right now at this point. So I think gamers are happy with it now. I don't think that's going to change in the next year or two. Some people might look at this and say, oh, well, yeah, some games aren't doing as well and you might feel differently in a couple years. And no, I don't think I'll feel differently in a couple years after playing PlayStation 5 Pro and seeing how great everything looks on there. I don't really think I will feel differently. And if you go back to 2020 when I bought my PlayStation 5, my PS4 Pro was fine. Like I wouldn't say I regret buying it back then, but really there's nothing that my PS4 Pro couldn't do at that time either. I was just buying it because I'm like, okay, well, let me take a look at some of the games like Returnal and all that. For me, me, I don't think anything's really going to change. I think that I'll be fine with my PlayStation 5 Pro when the PS6 comes out, whenever it does, which Mark Cerny seems to think that it's a bit further down the line, but we'll see about that, considering that Microsoft has been talking about their next generation system now for at least a year, mentioning it here and there. So it's going to be very interesting to see exactly what happens here. And I'll also say this, guys, and I know some people don't like to talk about this, and I'm not trying to make it political or anything, but inherently it is. Tariffs are going to play a big part into the next gen system's cost. Like, it just is. You have to factor in that instead of paying this amount or this price when you're importing that good from China or wherever it's coming from, or if you go to Vietnam or Cambodia or wherever the case is, like, you're going to have to pay significantly more than what you did at the start of the generation or even the last generation. Yet the cost of developing these systems is just as high, if not higher, than what it was before because of the high-tech chips and technology that you're using. And on top of that, the inflation has put a stranglehold on the tech industry when it comes to chips and manufacturing. So it's not like the prices are going down or leveling out there either. So it's one of those things to where it's going to be a factor, and they're going to have to factor that into the price. And it's already kind of wreaked havoc like we've seen before on multiple different platforms. Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo all raising prices on various different things, from controllers, accessories, systems, and all of that. We've also seen price hikes on services as well with Game Pass in addition to PlayStation Plus. So it's affecting everything now at this point. And for me, at least, I think that developers should really just focus in and hone in on making incredible experiences with the technology that we have. And honestly, I don't want to hear anything about next generation hardware for the next several years or anything. I saw the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2 and how much, I would say, vitriol and how much problems and how much stuff. Like, launching a system is absolutely crazy. There is just so much that goes about before it. And I think that going through that type of, I would say, headache when it comes to some of these console manufacturers probably isn't fun. And I think that developers can create a lot of cool experiences and great games in their own right now on the current systems that we do have. I don't think that this is a bad take or a take that's going to age poorly in like the next year or so. I think that games like Expedition 33, made by a very small team in comparison to other big games out there, that has inspired so many developers to talk to them, that has inspired so many players to go out there and play the game. And I think that there's other indie games like Hollow Knight, for example, that has sold 15 million copies heading into Silksong here, which people are excited about. You look at Nintendo's hardware, and clearly their hardware is not up to the level of a PlayStation 5 or a PlayStation 5 Pro, but they're able to sell tens of millions of units. The Nintendo Switch 1, best-selling device since the PlayStation 2 and the Nintendo DS, top 3 of all time, and still going. And that doesn't have the strongest specs, the best hardware, and all of that. And look at what they were able to do. So to me, it's about the software, it's about the marketing, it's about what you do with the games, it's about the ideas. That's what it's about overall at the end of the day, and that's what players want to see. I think I need publishers and developers to stop thinking that throwing more power and more tech behind something all of a sudden makes your game a lot better. It doesn't necessarily. There's a lot of indie games that are better than big AAA titles. There's a lot of AA games that are better than big AAA games out there. Trails in the Sky First Chapter is a AA game that's coming out, and it looks incredible, and I think it's going to do very well across all the platforms that it's on. So for me, actually looking at the experiences, and I think for a lot of gamers, from people that I talk to on my live streams, to people that I see on Twitter, social media, and even IRL, people are happy with the games. People are happy with the systems. They just want to see more output from, I would say, first party from Sony. I think that's one thing that people want to see a bit more of when it comes to first party output. Get rid of the live service nonsense that's happening. That's already on mobile with the microtransactions and all that. Focus in, hone in, and get us great games overall. That's what people want to see with the Nintendo Switch 2. That's what people want to see with Microsoft, although it's a bit weird because Microsoft is now not necessarily a first-party company. They're more of a third-party company that puts their games on everything. So people just want to see them, okay, you purchased all these other IPs and you purchased all these other companies, manage them well, stop firing them, and put out the games. And I think that Microsoft is going to hone in and do that a bit more as they've got an influx of cash coming in from PlayStation PlayStation 5 users and will be coming in probably 2026 from Nintendo Switch 2 owners, as Indiana Jones is now confirmed for the Nintendo Switch 2, and Nate the Hate is now saying that Starfield is coming, which was a previous rumor. So everything that we talked about here, from the price hikes to the install base situation to the utilization of the actual hardware that we have, I think that there's just no need. And I'm hoping with these console manufacturers, with Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, they understand that. Now, I do have one more interesting thing I think that Nintendo could do, because they are the weakest when it comes to the system power out of them, and maybe we'll feel differently in the next couple of years when developers say that we can't get our games on the system as well as we want, or maybe frame rates kind of go down. I think that Nintendo could do something interesting like they did with the Super Nintendo, with like the FX chip or something like that, and maybe even build in some type of chip into the system that actually makes it to where it can go a little bit above and beyond what it can normally do. Now, I know that would be incredibly expensive, and I'm not even sure if it's possible with today's technology, but it is something that they did on the Super Nintendo to get certain effects and get certain things that the Super Nintendo wasn't even capable of to do for games. So I think that it's absolutely possible, and it'd be something interesting if Nintendo wanted to do that. But I kind of fully see Nintendo doing some type of Nintendo Switch 2 Pro system, or like redesign or remodel that's actually like an enhancement. So very much like a Nintendo DSi, or a new Nintendo 3DS, or an Xbox One X, or a PlayStation 4 Pro. I'm not necessarily including those when you're talking about the same system, but just a little bit stronger model people can trade in. It's a little bit different talking about that. So I do think that that's possible in the next number of years, but I don't think we need to see a Nintendo Switch 3 or a PlayStation 6 or the next Xbox system anytime soon, in my opinion. And I think that Yoshi-P has a very good point here. But how do you feel when it comes to all this that we discussed here in the video? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch 2 RPG content and more right here on screen. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.